Hello, my name is John Rohr, and I built a 2D video game in Unity. And we all know what Unity is. It's just a game engine. You can create games on it, 2D or 3D. Um, what is in my game? I have a player that you can run around and move with. I have two types of enemies, a possum and a frog. I have coins you can collect, and the objective of the game is to collect as many coins as you can before you die. Um, so, a little overview of objects in Unity. You want objects to interact with, obviously, or you want objects that you don't want to interact with. And I'm going to explain further in a little bit because, yeah, sometimes you want them to be visible or invisible. Examples of objects would be enemies, players, floors, coins, and etc. Um, why would you want invisible objects? Well, sometimes you have objects in Unity that you don't want to see, like your music. That's an object in Unity. You don't want any sort of part of it to be visible, typically. And as you can see on the right-hand side, in my editor, you can see there is a microphone icon, and that is what's playing my background music. But when you play the game, you do not see it. Um, and there's also information gathering objects. As you can see, this ground detection, that is a child of my frog. What this is doing is this is helping my frog detect uh, walls and ground. This wall detection object is actually obsolete. I need to delete it because my ground detection is detecting both walls and ground at this point. But yeah, this is helping my frog move around and whatnot. And this is something that you don't see in the actual game. This is just in the editor. These arrows can help you place where you want it exactly. So, so yeah, that's a few reasons why you would want invisible and uninteractive objects. And some examples of interactive and visible objects would be players, enemies, or gems. You know, you can use gems as a currency maybe if you have a game where you can purchase things, or if you can use it as a point system as well. And this right here is my camera. This is actually one of those non-interactive invisible objects that you can see in the editor, but you do not see in the actual game. And a big thing about game development, at least in my opinion, is collision detection. And as you can see here, there's a green box around my player, and that is basically the area where my player is solid. So inside of this box, that's where my player is solid. You can use scripts to ignore collision. You can basically override collision in your scripts if you choose to do so. And you can also use them to create special interactions like uh, death and whatnot. And yeah, without them, your player would fall through the ground. If the ground didn't have a box collider, or if your player didn't have a box collider, either or your player would fall through. So you need both to make sure you can stand on the floor. And in class we'll do a collision demo for that. But for this video, I'm pressed for time. And so yeah, basically, how does anything know to do anything? It's all about scripts. What tells the player to do what tells the enemies to do what, etc., etc. It's all about scripts. And what a script does, it is once you attach it to an object, it'll add functionality to it. Like for example, you could have your music disabled or a sound effect disabled until something happens. So in my player script, you could see, for example, um, this is my collect sound effect for my gems, and it's initially set to true, and if it's set to true, we'll set it to false. And then if we collide with a game object that has a tag named coin, we will destroy the coin, and then we will set the collect sound effect to true. And then after it was set to true, we set it to false again so we can restart the process over so we can keep collecting coins and keep making that sound effect when we collect the coin. And as for my player, he can run, jump, dash. He contains my largest script. So we were just in my character script, and you can see there's a lot of objects. When I start, I set that collect sound effect that I was talking about. I set it to false. I set my game over sound to false. Just a whole bunch of things are set to false. This is basically all my game over stuff. We don't want to see that when the game starts. We're grabbing a rigid body 2D component, and that allows more interactability with your objects and whatnot. Can add some physics to it. And also the animator. This will allow different animations for different circumstances. And we go into my fixed update, and this will run every 0.02 seconds. About if it is dead, we will just return. We won't do this because we don't want anything happening if our player is dead. And then right here, we are grabbing our axis for which direction we're trying to move. And then we're going to call the jump method. And we are going to set the speed variable for our animations to whatever our move variable is at. And then we're also checking to see which direction we're facing, so our player can look accordingly. And then this right here, this is our dash. So we're grabbing the speed, and then we times it by 0.15 to make your character go a little bit faster. And then otherwise, you'll just move at the typical rate of speed. And then here's our jump method. If we press key down, space, and if we're not jumping, we'll set is jumping to true. And then we'll add a force to it. And then we will set the jump animation trigger, we will set it off. So then we can play the jump animation. And then on our collision 2D method, this is actually a built-in thing for Unity. So it does certain things according to this method. So when you collide with an object, and then we're just naming any type of object it collides with as other. And then right here we are comparing the tag of the object. So if the tag equals enemy, and as you can see right here in our inspector, our frog has a tag named enemy. And then another example, this gem has a tag named coin. So if the tag equals enemy, we will set all our game over stuff to true. We will zero out our player's movement, and then we will add a jump, basically a jump force to it. He will jump in the air. Is dead will equal true. We will disable our box collider. We will play some game over sounds. We will add a game over image. We will disable our music, etc. And then otherwise, we'll also check to see if our game object that we're colliding with is the ground. We will set is jumping to false. So that way we know if we're touching the ground, we'll know that is jumping is false. So then we can re-enable jumping. And then right here is basically saying, is checking which direction we're facing. And then if we're facing right, or if we're facing left, if we're moving left, it will transform the scale of the character and flip the artwork around so it makes sense in the direction it's facing. And then on trigger enter 2D, this is anytime we collide with coins. There is a difference between on trigger enter and on collision enter. I think it's kind of a little bit hard to explain. I'm not exactly sure, but we won't go into detail about it. But we're checking if collect is active, if the collect sound effect is active, we're initially going to disable it because it'll play the sound. It's just a quick sound, and if it's still active, it's not going to make any noise, and it's not set to loop or anything either. So we will then check if our game object tag equals coin. We will destroy the coin, and then we will collect, or sorry, we will set active our collect sound effect. So it'll play. And then as soon as it plays, we're gonna disable it. So then we can play it from the start again. And then this is our animations tree. We can go a little bit more over this in class. I guess I could show you real quick. So from any state, um, we can set the jump trigger, and if we set the jump trigger in our script, like we do in our player script, it'll play the jump animation, and then from there we can also play the player idle if the speed is less than 0.01, or if the speed is greater than 0.01, we'll play the run animation, the idle or run depending on the speed, and then from those two as well. If the speed is greater than 0.01, we'll play the run animation from idle, and then if the speed is less than 0.01, we'll play the idle animation. And then from any state, if dies equals true, we will play the death animation. So our enemies, we got two different enemies. I have two different scripts. And this is the simpler of the two. We have speed moving right, and then we have our ground detection, which is one of those invisible objects that we don't interact with. It is just set in front of the possum, and it's just going to be basically drawing an invisible line downward and an invisible line forward to check for any type of collisions. And in our update method, here we are getting the speed. We're setting the speed for the possum over a certain period of time. And then here we are with these raycasts, and those are those invisible vectors that I was talking about, those lines that will detect whether or not we collide with anything. And so this one is checking downward, and then at a length of 1. I don't know exactly how long 1 is, but I know that if you mess with this variable, you can get a longer line, and if you know, a longer or shorter depending on what you set it to. And then it's just the same for this. So this one is checking for walls. We're setting the vector to right to check for walls in front of it, and then we set its length to 1. And then if ground info dot collider equals false, so if we get to the edge of a platform, or if we collide with a wall, and the collider dot tag equals player does not equal player, if there's either the edge of a platform, a wall, or if, and also if any sort of collision that we're detecting does not equal player, we're then going to check if moving right equals true. And if it's true, we're going to turn our player around on the X position. Or, yeah, I think this comment's wrong, but it turns our player around on the X position. And then we will set moving right to false. And then our grounded wall detection will end up on the left side of the enemy. And then otherwise, if we detect some sort of collision or even non-collision from the vector 2 down or whatever, we will then turn our player around and we will set moving right to true. And then in our frog script, it's basically the exact same concept, except whenever we collide with the ground, we're going to add a force, and we're just going to make him jump. But this one, it actually doesn't check to see if he reaches the edge of a platform. So if he ends up at the edge of a platform, he can actually jump off the platform. But that makes it so without these walls at the edge of the map, the frog could actually fall off the map. So when we hit play, or let's see, yeah, when we hit play, we will see the frog jumps and he goes in a certain direction, and that possum will turn around when he hits a wall. See, he's turning around when he hits this wall right here. And if we collide with him, it's game over. And if there's things I may have missed, the music and sound effects, the camera script. The camera script's pretty simple. The camera will check for my player position in accordance with where I set the camera. It'll check the offset, and then on late update, it will just set it equal to where my player is plus the offset. So it'll just follow my player. And then my restart button script, when I click restart, it'll just load the demo scene. So I think that is it. It's a lot to cover, a lot to condense, but that's what I got. Thank you for your time.